So everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Adam Hart, a curator and archivist at the nonprofit Media Burn Archive based in Chicago. We collect, produce, and distribute documentary and experimental video created by artists, activists, and community groups. Our mission is to use archival media to deepen context and encourage critical thought through a social justice lens. This event is part of our ongoing free series called Virtual Talks with Video Activists, which brings together media producers, scholars, and viewers to discuss the art and politics of video and of documentary. Upcoming events include on May 25th, director Leanne Erickson discussing her documentary From One Place to Another, Emma Goldman Clinic Stories. And in June, filmmaker William Farley in conversation with Bruce Jenkins about Farley's new documentary, I Want to Be a Man with a Gun, a World War II doc. Tonight, we're absolutely thrilled to welcome film and video maker Mimi Pickering for a screening and discussion of her landmark documentary, Chemical Valley. She will be in conversation with scholar and curator Patricia Zimmerman. Before we begin, we ask that you all remain muted during the screening so that everyone can hear clearly. When it's time for the Q&A, you can feel free to put your questions in the chat. You're welcome to ask questions out loud as well, and if you'd like to do that, you can virtually raise your hand to be called on. If you want to raise your hand, look for the reactions button at the bottom of the Zoom screen, click it, and some options will pop up, including one to raise your hand. If you have trouble finding this feature, you can always write in the chat that you'd like to be called on. We'd also like to point out that this event is being live captioned. There are two ways of viewing the captions: as subtitles on the bottom of the screen or in a live transcript window that will open up separately. To turn the captions on or off, or to switch between the subtitle and live transcript, look for the live transcript button at the bottom of the screen and click on the arrow on the top right. If you enjoy the event tonight and want to share it with others, the event is being recorded and will be posted online within a few days. We'll send you an email when the recording is available. So about tonight's participants. Mimi Pickering has been making films and videotapes with Appalshop since 1971. Her documentaries often feature women as principal storytellers, focus on injustice and inequity, and explore the efforts of grassroots people to deal with community problems and work for change. A native of California who attended Antioch College, Pickering had her first media experience as an intern in Charleston, West Virginia, working for the West Virginia Black Lung Association, a group of disabled coal miners and their families who were fighting for just compensation for their Black lung disease and to reform the United Mine Workers Union. While in West Virginia, she began to work with Appalshop on a film production that became her first 16mm film, The Struggle of Coon Branch Mountain. In 1972, Pickering relocated to Eastern Kentucky to continue her film training and media production at Appalshop. She has continued her interest in West Virginia subjects throughout her career. Her award-winning documentaries include The Buffalo Creek Flood, An Act of Man from 1975, which was one of 25 culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant motion pictures named by the Librarian of Congress to the National Film Registry in 2005. Described by Newsweek as a powerful piece of muckraking on film, the documentary was a silver plaque winner at the Chicago International Film Festival. Our moderator for the evening will be Patricia R. Zimmerman, the Charles A. Dana Professor of Screen Studies and the Roy H. Park School of Communications at Ithaca College. She is also director of the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival, a major international film festival housed at Ithaca College now in its 26th year. The author or editor of 10 books, including Real Families, A Social History of Amateur Film. Her most recent volumes include The Flaherty, Decades in the Cause of Independent Cinema, and Flash Flaherty, Tales from a Film Seminar, both with Scott McDonald, and Documentary Across Platforms, Reverse Engineering Media, Place, and Politics. With Dale With Dale Hudson, she is writing a new book on transnational new media projects as a follow-up to Thinking Through Digital Media, entitled Digital Habitats, Transnational New Media and the Environment. Her large-scale curatorial project, co-programmed with Louis Massia of Scribe Video Center, We Tell, 50 Years of Participatory Community Media, screened at over 20 sites across the United States. We welcome both of them. Tonight, we will be screening the first half of Chemical Valley. The other half is available to watch online. To discuss from the first half, but do encourage you to finish out the viewing after the event. But before we start, Patty and Mimi, would you like to say anything to introduce the screening?
Yeah, I'll just start. And first of all, I want to welcome all the participants. And I think Mimi and I would really like to thank MediaBurn Archive and Adam for putting this together, because it's really important. I'm just going to say a sentence or two about Chemical Valley and about its significance in the history of documentary. This is a massively significant film made in 1991, and it is significant because it broke new ground in thinking about environmental filmmaking on the side of environmental justice and environmental racism and environmental classism. You might be asking, what's the other side? And the other side is kind of Earth Day, save the earth, don't use plastic bottles. This was a burgeoning kind of debate in the environmental politics movement in the United States and around the world. And this film was part of those very large political debates and really broke new ground in helping us think through how the environment, the built environment, corporations, people, health, land, and water are interconnected. I'll toss it over to you, Mimi.
Thank you for those really nice comments, Patty. Yeah, we won't take much time here. We'll get right to the film. I lived briefly in West Virginia, not in the Kanawha Valley, not far from these plants, and I would go to work, drive. If you've ever been on I-64, you drive across the river and you smell this rotten cabbage smell. And that's just one of the many plants that were and still mostly are along the river there. And so I was somewhat aware of the chemical industry being there. But when the Bhopal disaster happened in 1983, which the film will go into a little bit, the sister plant or the mother plant was in Institute, West Virginia. And we at Apple Shop had always thought, although we work in Appalachia and our work is about Appalachia, that we're really connected. A lot of our issues and a lot of life, a lot of connections to people in other places around the world. And so we really felt connected when we knew that there was both, something had happened in Bhopal and there was a direct connection to West Virginia. So that's kind of how we got started on this project that really went from 1984 until completed it in 1991, because we were really following the community as they struggled and worked through these issues. So and I do encourage you to see the final half hour of the film as well. So let's get right to it.
On December 3rd, 1984, the worst industrial accident in history occurred when 40 tons of methyl isocyanate, known as MIC, leaked from a Union Carbide pesticide plant in Bhopal, India.
We are talking about maybe about 5,000 people dead, which will be very hard to document because many people fled Bhopal and died in cities other than Bhopal. We're talking about at least 50,000 persons who are facing serious medical problems. There is no doubt that it is a carcinogen and it is a mutagen, that people who have been exposed will suffer for the rest of their life and future generations will suffer. There is no doubt about it.
I was in Florida, down Disney World. Just as I got out of the car, I heard this thing, you know, Bhopal, and it killed X number of people. I had a Carbide Institute jacket on the thing. I just took my jacket off and stuck it back in the car. You know, I said, man, right just as soon as I found out the situation, I think a lot of people felt that right off, you know, that the fact that you were part of that thing.
चलो घबरा मत शांति रखो शांति रखो छोड़ो शांति रखो समझे शांति रखो बिल्कुल शांति रखो घबरा मत शांति रखो अरे ये घबराने से कोई काम नहीं चलेगा तेरे को हिम्मत से काम लो दुनिया के साथ में हुआ अपने साथ में क्या
The only place in the United States that manufactures MIC, a chemical used in the process of making pesticides, is the Union Carbide Institute plant, located in the Kanawha Valley of West Virginia.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All of us here at the Institute plant have been deeply saddened by the tragic event in India, and we extend our sympathy to all the people in the city of Bhopal. I'm pleased to have an opportunity to make a point here this morning. The employees of the Institute plant have been manufacturing MIC in an effective and safe manner for 17 years. We are extremely proud of that safety record. We are confident in the ability of our trained, dedicated, skilled, and experienced people. We are confident in the equipment that we operate, the safety precautions that we utilize, the monitoring systems that we have, and our plant emergency preparedness.
It is the best insecticide, as far as I'm concerned, on the market. It saved the cotton crop in Egypt 2 or 3 different times. It also was used in India to reproduce and mass produce their wheat crop that saved thousands of people from starving to death. As a matter of fact, we used 2 years ago in a lab where they sprayed the vegetables with insecticide. After we analyzed them, we ate the rest of them. So I know it's not harmful.
Well, you know, that terrible tragedy that occurred in India, I think the effect has been this, and that is a greater awareness. An awareness that the industry's here, an awareness that it is in an area that's populated by 250,000 people, and that it's also an awareness, gee whiz, we've been the safest industry all along. How safe do we have to be?
And I just didn't believe that such a thing as Bhopal could ever exist or would happen. But it really shook this community up. And please believe me, the community is still quaking.
A message to the people of Bhopal. We are writing you from the shadow of the Union Carbide chemical plant at Institute, West Virginia. We are residents, professors, and college students who oppose MIC production in our community. Like you, we are people who need industry for jobs and for the products that make lives better. Like you, we now know that safety and health come first. May our common concern bond your community and ours for many years to come. People concerned about MIC.
Institute, I love all Institute. I love thy walls and thy campus green, boys that are strong and steady, the girls the fairest I've ever seen. Tra-la-la, Institute, I love old Institute, and I know you'll learn to love her too. That was our school song. West Virginia, this area was probably an area that was rather free beyond the hills. Mr. Cabell was white and had owned slaves, but he married one of them. They were really the very early settlers in this valley. One of the grandchildren sold the first 3 acres to the state of West Virginia for the beginning of a school for children, for blacks and children of mixed marriages in this area.
My grandfather came here from Raymond City, where he was a coal miner, and he wanted to put his children in, bring them here so that they would have access to the college over here. There are 9 of us. All of us were going here.
It was a very close-knit community. You knew everyone, and we trusted, everyone trusted everyone.
It was very beautiful. It was challenging. There was a time you could have found from any corner of the state black representation.
One of the plants started buying up land. Then I can remember the smells. Institute wasn't, it didn't seem like it was as fresh, airish-like, you know. And then it seemed like we were more confined.
I came to Institute when I was 17½ years old. And I was a freshman at West Virginia State College. I thought this was the smelliest, dirtiest, and anything that's derogatory about the atmosphere. And it was hard to breathe here, but this was where I was going to college.
They didn't hire Negroes, with exception, eventually they began to hire them, but it was menial work. I understand that even one of the presidents of the college, who was a professor of chemistry, I think he has a doctorate, applied, and they were going to give him a job as a janitor or something.
They were already invading the community with the pollution, terrible pollution, but they wanted it not to be an attractive community. They would put the tanks and so forth, and, you know, all of that plant stuff right next to houses. I often wonder if it had been a white neighborhood, would they have done the same thing? Maybe if it had been a white underprivileged neighborhood, yes. But I know it wouldn't have happened if it would have been, had it been people of affluency.
Those of us who may have thought that this was affecting us one way or the other may have been a bit fearful, because I do know that when you open up your mouth years ago, somebody shut it up for you, one way or the other.
Powerlessness was the name of the game. Who would dare speak to the corporate board or even try to contact them about the odors? And I dare say that the president of the college even thought about it, because that was just not the way things were done. So we just endured.
On May 4th, 1985, Union Carbide resumed MIC production at Institute after spending $5 million to improve safety. On August 11th, 1985, 500 gallons of highly toxic aldecarboxene and methylene chloride leaked from the Institute plant. Plant officials waited 20 minutes before warning the community.
Just looked just like a fog, a mist in the morning, dew. My head's been hurting me and sick in my stomach.
When they told you it was a leak, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
India, you're so helpless. There's nothing you can do, you know. How far can you run?
There were about 500 gallons in the tank. It is now suspected that the material overheated, which resulted in a pressure buildup. This caused 3 gaskets on the tank to fail. In addition, a safety valve on the tank opened and discharged material into the emergency vent system.
There were 134 people seen at hospital emergency rooms. Union Carbide Corporation will assume responsibility for medical expenses. We have no reason to believe that there will be any long-term health effects from their exposure.
Mr. Carawan, after Bhopal occurred, didn't you in fact assure the people of this community that this kind of thing could not happen here?
Definitely did.
Bhopal?
Bhopal type incident
hasn't happened.
Well, although the gas was not a deadly
You're not
gas.
suggesting that this comes anywhere near Bhopal.
No, I'm saying that you suggested that this sort of thing that happened yesterday could not occur here at this Institute plant.
I don't think I said that unequivocally.
The Reset Institute has caused some problems vis-a-vis our credibility and the community. Somebody has sold a bill of goods that this is a zero-risk world, and I don't want to have any risks. And life is not that way. Can't be that way. You know, I think in today's environment, you couldn't invent the pencil. It has a very sharp point. Children use it. You can stick it in your eye or your ear. I doubt that you could get the pencil introduced in the market today.
Hey, hey, what do you say? Reset carbide.
Carbide is synonymous with Canal Valley. It's become an institution here, and I feel that they have contributed not only jobs to this valley, but the philanthropy, and we are behind them 100%.
And he worked at Carbide 31, and look at him. Ain't nothing wrong with him.
He's still alive, huh?
Yeah, I'm retired. He's in good health, too.
There are two ways to die in this valley, chemical or starvation. Starvation's a slow process.
My husband works for Carbide at 7 Unit. He was in the spill last weekend. I wasn't worried about him then, and I'm not worried about him now. His father before him, and his stepfather's father worked for Carbide. By golly, there's not a better employer in the valley and never will be.
We welcome you to this meeting of people concerned about MIC. Among those in the audience today is the president of Union Carbide Chemicals and Plastics. He was invited to listen to the concerns that we have.
You fumble and stumble and cause our lives to be turned upside down over things you misplaced over 500 gallons of this mixture. Now, I can see misplacing 1 or 2 gallons of gasoline around your house. Who owes us for our gardens not being able to eat? And I'll tell you the truth, I would need it now. Because as I understand, most of the people I talked to in the Institute, their gardens didn't get checked. Whose garden got checked? Y'all from Institute, raise your hands. Whose garden got checked? Y'all gonna eat that mess? It wasn't the emergency whistle. It was the fire whistle. And firemen went running to get a fire. As they ran for the fire, I was running out of Institute with my 2 kids, trying to save the lives that I put here on earth, not for Carbide to take away.
The birds stopped singing Sunday morning, and they came back Wednesday. I paid particular attention because my husband and I both love birds. And I don't like living where I have to worry every night and get up every morning and worry about making it through the day. And I'm mad about it. That's all I have to say is get out.
Last Sunday, I got up on the interstate and they detoured me, so I came out right at the gates to Union Carbide. There was a blue light flashing. I realized there was a gas leak. I'm pregnant. I'm 2 months pregnant. I find out, I called everywhere to find out what the long-term effects were. I cannot get any information whatsoever. They tell me, first I find out it's a class 1 chemical that I was exposed to, not to worry about it. I come to find out it's a class 4 chemical that does cause birth defects, that has mutagenic effects, things like that. We just don't know. I'm just really frustrated right now. I don't want to find out 7 months from now that my baby's going to be deformed.
The great big corporation assured us that they had all these warning signals, that they had everything under control. But yet I'm across the street and I don't even hear a damn signal. By the time my family got up, the gas was all in our house. My 2 kids sleep in the front bedroom directly facing Carbide.
And I had fans in my house because I'm not fortunate enough to have central air conditioning and heating. And I had fans bringing gas in my house to my kids, trying to get ventilation. And yes, I'm outraged.
We and you have a great problem. Some of you want us simply to shut down, and we can do that. In fact, considering the size of Union Carbide and the fact that we make fun things like ever-ready batteries and electronics and graphite electrodes, which never much hurt anybody, it would in some ways be simpler for us to cut our economic losses and shut it down and write it off and walk away from the enormous burden of the terrible publicity that we have received. The reason I think we can't shut down is because I don't think we're an organization of quitters. I really don't think that we want to admit that we are not capable of managing our affairs. That's why we shouldn't shut down. If we don't make those chemicals, someone will. You can wish the problem on somebody else. I had a dog once who was overly aggressive, and he bit a mailman once. And he missed a mailman about 3 times, and I was very upset about it.
Will you listen? I don't want to hear your dog story. We're talking about people and their lives and their homes and their families. Our payroll number is 11554. You want it, you can have it. But I'm not going to quit. I'm going to be one of them employees out there making sure you're home by the safety rules. Making sure you're
Anderson and Kennedy, they come in here for a day, and they're gone. They're gone home to their nice little palaces wherever. They don't smell this mess. Take a whiff right now. It's stinking out here.
They're playing games with us.
They killed the Indians. Now they're killing the hillbillies.
Right in front of us here is the campus of West Virginia State College. Over there is the West Virginia Rehabilitation Center. And that is a place where most of the people are physically handicapped and would have great difficulty moving out. The interstate runs along over there, but you cannot get on the interstate without going past Carbide here. One of the things that Carbide kept telling people in this valley for more than a year, we won't leave you, don't worry. And then we learned that not only are they actively seeking to sell the plant now, but they had that in mind for more than a year.
In the fall of 1986, Union Carbide sold its agricultural products division to Rhone-Poulenc. Rhone-Poulenc took over the management of the Institute plant, although Union Carbide retained ownership of about half the units within the facility.
I would just like to give you a very short information about Rhone-Poulenc. Rhone-Poulenc is a large chemical company, one of the largest in Europe. It has sales of $8 billion, and it employs 84,000 people around the world. Safety is a key concern of our top management.
There has been some questions. Is Rhone-Poulenc running the company, or is Carbide? Today, we're following the processes and the policies that were instituted in operating the plant that were installed and came about because of the severe crisis period that went through. Some great thought went into it. We can't just come in and change that. We're following that. We'll make the changes when the time is correct.
We are working very hard to reduce emissions, and we've made an awful lot of progress.
Do you know what the chemicals are that we usually smell most of the time in the Institute area? Do you have any idea specifically what they are? Because, you know, the smell is common.
No.
I call you, I ask you, what is it in the air? Generally, my daughters out there will say, Mommy, what is that? And they become sick. I've called many times, and you're very good about sending your human sniffers. Mr. Huddleston came up, he's very polite. Hello, ma'am, I'm so-and-so Huddleston from Carbide. And ma'am, you know, I've been driving around your area for about 30 minutes, and I can't smell a thing. I'm very sorry. I said, let me tell you something. My husband died of cancer in June, a young man, after going through Vietnam, living through all that hell over there, coming here and dying. I said, my husband died in June of cancer. I said, you see that house across the street? I said, she died last week of cancer. See the apartment? I said, right behind that apartment, see that yellow house? I said, that man died of cancer practically the same day that that woman died. I said, back behind her, her brother's dying of cancer. Back behind him, another lady is ill with cancer. I said, and you come up here and tell me you don't smell anything. I said, well, I'm tired of it.
All I can say is we have a crew of people on each shift that respond to odor complaints from the community, and we do confirm numerous odors with we call it our odor patrol.
I think that what these people would like to know is precisely what is it that they're breathing, in what concentrations, and if you don't have the technology, then I think you better get it real soon, because that's really what it's going to take to answer those questions.
The chemical industry constitutes such a big part of West Virginia's private sector that without, West Virginia would almost be without. You have to understand West Virginia's economy now is well, I wasn't going to say it's not in shambles, but certainly it ranks either around 48th or 49th worst in the country. I think we do rank 49th in personal income. So you can see that an industry that has such high wages and contributes so much to the economy, how important it is to our state.
When the first whites came here, Indians showed them how to extract salt from the brine. The first true chemical industry was also based on salt, and that developed in the early 1900s. With the coming of World War I, chemical supplies from Germany were cut off.
I wish I could do something for you, ma'am, but aspirin came from Germany, you know.
Yes. Thank you. Goodbye.
Jim, come look.
What's the matter?
The dye, it runs, and this is a new dress, too.
You think that's bad? Look at my new hat.
I sure wish we could get good dyes again.
You said it.
The U.S. government was looking for an ideal location to encourage the development of chemical plants. In doing a study, they found that this was the place. Nitro, West Virginia, for example, was a World War I boomtown. The government developed a gunpowder plant there and a TNT plant there. In the years following World War I, Monsanto came, DuPont came, Union Carbide had a contract on a product which would keep TNT from freezing. They moved their operation from Clendenin down to South Charleston. And now things are starting to be based on different types of feedstock that are petroleum-based, gas, oil, coal. In World War II, we weren't getting natural rubber from the Far East, so the government desperately needed synthetic rubber in the war effort. What's now the Union Carbide Institute plant was built by the federal government.
The men in rubber, in petroleum, and in chemicals formed a combat team to fight the battle for man-made rubber. It was a battle we had to win. With the rubber we needed, our war machine went into high gear, and we struck back all over the globe. And we kept on striking back till the job was done.
At the end of the war, the federal government then sold that plant to Union Carbide. And I don't recall the exact amount they sold it for, but basically they gave it to them.
The nation's industrial skyline parted in the middle to make room for the growing chemical industry. From now on, man could look to chemistry to release him from his dependence on fortunate circumstances.
Today, plastics are changing the appearance of our everyday world. As the years go by, new materials will be found, new processes discovered, and new machinery invented. With new uses, there arise new wants. New wants mean new markets and new prosperity. This world of the molecule belongs to us all. It is yours to explore, your new frontier.
It's only in the 1950s that things started to really zoom. And it was considered kind of this miracle industry that could, in fact, I think in the Kanawha Valley it was called Miracle Valley or something like that. Because the chemical industry was supposed to bring us all these new benefits. And the promise, like, of nuclear power was that we could get all this virtually for free in terms of risk.
Ortho, night, rocco, oil, benzene. Wow.
Henry, not more hair tonic, and with a spray.
This pet is not hair tonic. It's Weed No More, designed especially to take the backbreak out of lawn care, sweeten the disposition, and strengthen the soul.
For the first time since the dawn of history, he's completely the victor. Easily, effortlessly, economically. For now, it's goodbye weeds.
It's new, new, new with beauty true. It's Agilon Stretch, nylon yarn. It's Agilon Stretch, nylon yarn.
What's it to you? It's a remarkable new polyester film called Mylar.
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, I am.
Plastics.
We are only sort of rubbing our eyes and saying, for the first time now, look at what we have got our hands on here. We have just created an enormous factory making incredible amounts of these chemicals, and with nobody minding the store, nobody saying, what can we tolerate on this planet? It's partly because it's so new that it has been so unregulated, and partly because of the power of the chemical industry.
All right. I'm posting the link to the second half in the chat for anybody who would like to watch it. And let's begin with the Q&A. Patty, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, can we get Mimi on the screen as well?
Yeah.
So we've just watched the first half hour of this extraordinary film, and I have questions that are just swirling around in my mind. And the first thing I just want to say before I ask the question is, I think it's really important for viewers to understand this was made as part of Apple Shop, and that you've been part of Apple Shop for many, many decades. Apple Shop is one of the most significant community media centers in the world, and it started in 1969, so it's been in operation for over 50 years. So can you tell us a little bit about why you made the film? You know, what impels you to do this?
Well, one of the things we do is we try to, if people ask us, either people that we work with or communities ask us to come and document something, you know, we try to respond to that. And in this case, one, we were just floored by the disaster in India, and then shocked that was so close to home where the chemical mother plant was. But John Gavenda, the director of the Highlander Center at the time, did have a lot of connections with participatory research folks in India, and they worked to bring a group of people over to the US to really talk, to kind of do a tour and to talk to people about what had happened in Bhopal. And so they were some workers, some researchers from India. And so they came to Institute, and John asked us if we would cover that, if we would document it. And so Ann Lewis and I, who is the co-director of the film, we went over to Institute and we covered their discussion with people there at Institute. And we were really, you know, we were interested in the whole story, but, you know, just didn't know if there was going to be any story. And so we kind of left that, shared the video with John to use as he wanted to. And then, as it shows in the film, things were pretty quiet there. And then the leak happened in August of not that long after they had, put all this safety stuff in the plant, and the community that just erupted and was so angry. And we went over and filmed that community meeting at West Virginia State College, and really thought this is something, a subject in a community that we want to focus on. And also the reaction from the carbide workers who organized this big parade in support of the company, which you saw in that part of the film. And it was such an example of the jobs versus environment, jobs versus community safety happening right there. And that was just becoming more a starker and starker reality at that time, and unfortunately still is in lots of cases. So we wanted to follow that as well.
And that as you discuss the community meetings and the workers, it's a good segue into my next question. How did you get access as filmmakers, you and Ann, to all of these different people? We have community people, we have union people, we have even the corporations, people from the corporations. We have different classes represented in the film, and it's also multiracial. We've got pro-company people, anti-company people, and throughout the film, we have these dual themes of leaks and safety. So could you talk a little bit about the process of developing rapport and trust with these different communities?
Well, I think the folks in Institute, those that were who taught at the college and were connected to college, and then those who'd lived there as the folks in the beginning of the film, their whole lives, they were just very receptive to telling their story. And, that was really wonderful. And I think, it was a long time ago, so I have to think, I think we did film that the community meeting there at the college, and we put together like about a 20-minute clip, maybe a little shorter, of that meeting. And then we shared that with the group people concerned about MIC there in Institute. We also, let others, like folks, there were people from Friends of the Earth, Fred Millar that's in there, that were, working on these issues of safety. And so we shared that with them too. But I think once we were able to share the videotape in Institute and people watched it, then I think they had trust for us and were, willing to sit down for interviews and stuff. Then the hardest folks to get were the current workers in the plant. The job fears were really great, and that took those interviews came pretty late in the production, where there were a couple of radical organizers that were working there, and they helped encourage some of the men to speak out, and those were really profound interviews, really powerful, and we were so glad to be able to do that. One of the, just mentioned Norm Ferguson, one of the people that we interviewed, the African-American worker, he died very young of, I'm sure some kind of toxic exposures, and they were all afraid of that.
Which is another theme throughout the film, which is leaks, safety, and cancer, health. How is this affecting bodies and gardens? As you talk about sharing the video with people in the community, I need to raise this issue because this is a different style of making a documentary than sort of current Netflix, Amazon, even public television, because it draws so much from the legacy of community-based media production, where authorship is not solely in the director, but is some kind of collaboration. And I'm struck by the word video as opposed to the word 16 millimeter. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about two issues that I think are twinned. The shift from 16 millimeter to video and how that impacted your work on the film, and then the affordances of video to do this kind of community collaboration, activation, and trust building.
Yeah, well, Apple Shop, when we started, had a little bit of Portapack video at that time, but I don't think we didn't really use it much. And we also were given this 16 millimeter equipment as part of the Community Film Workshop Council of Appalachia. And so we really were focused on 16 millimeter film. And we also, community media organization, we didn't have a lot of money. And so you could never shoot much film. In those days, 10 minutes of film, was about $400. I think the film and processing, and then you basically got a work print. You don't have much that you can get out and share. So we started doing some local origination television and got some video equipment, and then got improved that a little bit, and I really wanted to with an earlier project, I decided to do it in video instead of film. This was a 3/4 inch U-matic video, but I loved it because you could interview somebody for just as long as they wanted to talk, and you could digress, you could cover all kinds of subject areas, not just specifically what you thought you would use in the project. So that was something that 16 millimeter we couldn't afford to do. And then the other thing is, as we were just talking about, was the ability to, immediately cut something and share it with folks. There was no internet, there was no streaming, none of that, but you could easily get people a VHS tape or something. And 16 millimeter, you had to cut or make duplicates of the original. You had to cut it, you had to go to the lab, all of that just wasn't going to be possible. So I think early on, once and Ann Lewis, who was head of our Headwaters program, which was a series of short documentaries that we ran on public television, she was my partner on this project, and she always was cutting things and sharing them with whatever community she was working with. And I know that the clip we did of the community meeting was shared around the country and helped organize support for the new Right to Know Act and stuff. And to me, that just a really exciting use of the film material.
Yeah, and what you're describing is the affordances of video, cutting out all those steps of negatives, internegatives, release prints, etc. And secondly, the ability of the media to immerse in these communities and be constantly adapted and used. It's important to remember these histories of sharing that are a little different than social media. Another question I have is about documentary form. And this work uses quite a big palette of documentary strategies and modes. It uses archival material, it uses interviews, It uses a kind of cinema verite, handheld immersion into the community meetings. And it uses a editing strategy that is extremely political and dialectical. The editing, I think we can look at it and miss this. But when I watched the film the second time, I realized we're really in a dialectic here between the corporation and what they say, their ideological stance versus what people's lived experiences. You know, it's ideology versus embodied lived experience. So I wonder if you could talk about the mixture of cinematic strategies. I can only imagine how complicated this was to shoot and edit, because it is a complex film covering so much ground, 2 countries, a very complex issue. So a little bit of your thoughts on style, strategy, mode.
Yeah, I think so. Anne and I, we would talk about, you know, the storyline and putting it together, and then we would sort of each take different sections and maybe there, you know, little sections within it and edit that, but then work on it together. But I think, you know, we were excited about the possibility of adding all those elements. And you know, I think that I know and I think probably Anne as well, we didn't really know much about the chemical industry and plastics and its history, and we thought it was really important to include that. And so and then we had one of our folks did the research into all of those promo films from the 50s and 60s, and they really, you know, we didn't use much narration, but there was so much ironic material in there, I feel like, and you know, we really felt like the most of the corporate people, you know, kind of just played their hand. You know, we didn't edit them to we didn't make an attempt to make them look bad, but they just did it on their own. And you know, it was really fun to edit those cinema verite-ish scenes, you know, to really, I mean, what we wanted was to follow community members as they were going through a process of, you know, discovery. And then what we were hoping is eventually, you know, there would be a sense of empowerment, you know, that they would develop over the course of these many years of trying to take on the chemical industry and make their communities safe. And so, you know, it was just, I think that's I was saying to you before, we didn't know, we were looking for a way to end the film, and we kept, you know, we said we can't go on forever. And, but we were hoping for some kind of resolution, you know, that would, and we were hoping it would be a pretty positive resolution, you know, that could conclude, could bring it to a conclusion. So I don't know, you know, how, I don't think we plotted it all out or plotted out a strategy. It just kind of fell together, and you know, we were figuring out different ways to tell what are a whole lot of different stories in there.
Yeah, and you know, what's so striking about the film is the polyphony of voices we hear. There aren't experts there, you know, even the people who've written the books on the area are just part of this community. So this enormous polyphony of voices is a different way of making a film. And I'm just thinking about the way so many contemporary documentaries are a character struggle, and then a triumph. and they just default to this kind of bourgeois individualism. And this film is very striking in its insistence on using the film itself as a place to gather all these different voices. And I was really struck by two things with the corporate people. One is currently, I think very few filmmakers can have access to so many corporate people. I think they've gotten very smart with their comms people about not doing interviews. And secondly, I am struck by the generosity in which they are represented. I think a lot of filmmakers in our contemporary era have a kind of hit and run attitude of, get them to say something so heinous and then make fun of them, right? It's a very easy thing to do epistemologically, to just make fun. Here, there is no making fun. I felt this goes back to kind of very radical roots of journalism in the 40s and 50s of Edward R. Murrow, where people say things and they hang themselves, but they're hanging themselves in the context of the dialectics of always bumping against community, which helps the audience to see. So I have another question, which we can't learn from watching the film, which is, of course, how did this film circulate? Where was it shown? How was it distributed? How was it exhibited? And I think it's very important with this kind of political cinema to think about the multiple areas in which films like this end up living.
Well, it was shown on POV in 1991, which was really exciting. That was the first Appalshop film we had on that PBS. We also had regional PBS that we did, but so that was great. And they did one of their outreach campaigns around the film, which, they're very good, or at that time were very good at community screenings, letting people know. So that was good. Also, at the time that the film was done, there had been a lot of accidents in chemical plants around the country. And in part, I think it was something that was part of something that was happening in the Kanawha Valley, in that the chemical companies were they were turning their maintenance positions over to contract. They would contract with another company, like Halliburton was a big one. And those people would do all the maintenance, and the union workers were of course, they were losing union jobs, but they were also very concerned about safety. And so this action of contracting out that work seemed to really be leading to a lot of accidents in chemical plants. So we also, through Fred Millar, who's in the film, and others, connected with some of those communities that had had leaks and fires and explosions. I remember there was one in South Carolina in particular, and we got the film to them. We would also get the shorter piece to anybody as well, of just the community meeting. And so the film did circulate to a lot of communities to do, on the ground showings, which, we were really excited about. And then Appalshop, distributes to schools and libraries and universities, and it has circulated that way. It also showed there was as you mentioned earlier, this was sort of this time was the dawning of the more widely understood sense of environmental racism, and how the United Church of Christ had done a report that really documented how so many communities of color and low-income folks that these toxic facilities were just placed right next to them, as folks talk about in the film. And it's a national issue. Landfills, power plants, chemical facilities, etc. So that was to show it with those groups.
And thank you. And I think that's a wonderful place to end, because it shows that the politics of the film is just not in the film, but in how it's circulated in these multiple communities around the United States and contributed to the movement to environmental justice, environmental racism. I'm going to hand it back to Adam to close it out. Thank you so much, Mimi.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Patty and Mavie. That was an extremely powerful screening and a wonderful discussion. Once again, I encourage everyone to watch the second half of it. It's just as powerful. I've posted the link in the chat. I want to thank both Patty and Mimi for being here. If anybody is going to be in Pittsburgh in August, Mimi will be here in my neck of the woods for a screening. And I encourage you to come to Media Burn virtual events. Once again, on the slate coming up, we've got the great Jeff Krulik, who will be screening his wonderful documentary, Mr. Blassie Goes to Washington. We have Leanne Erickson with her documentary about the Emma Goldman Clinic. And we have William Farley with Bruce Jenkins screening footage from his new documentary about World War II. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.